As you all know, I'm Harry Thornberry from 1760, and today I'm joined by Sam Ford. He is co-founder of InnoEngine. It's an innovation consultancy helping organizations actually implement things they've never done before, and I'm sure Sam's got some examples for us today. Sam spent 20 years across MIT, Paramount, and Univision before launching InnoEngine in early 2025. Less than a year in, they're already working with some amazing clients and major public-private partnerships. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it, Harry. Very excited and honored to be a guest and talk to you about some things we're both passionate about, which is unlocking value for organizations and for initiatives that should be out in the world, but run the risk of either getting stuck or not getting out the gate, not getting started.
I always picture from our last conversation your role as the superhero that people hire on the side to come in and save them for a project.
Oh, well, one of the things that we say is, our clients are experts in what they do, but when they're trying to do something they've never done before, that presents a challenge, and they've got to concentrate on the things they already do. So how do we come in and help clear the barriers for them to incorporate something new that either must be done or would be hugely beneficial to have happen?
Yeah, of course. And that's where your breadth of experiences come in to help you be able to deliver such probably a transformational change or an implementation. So what's actually led you and the other two co-founders to start InnoEngine in the first place?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. For each of us, the journey was different. So I'll talk about my two co-founders' journeys first, briefly, and then I'll settle into my own.
Please.
So Vijay Kamanini, one of my fellow founding partners, he's our chief business officer. He started with a background in engineering in India, launched his first tech company in his 20s, ended up moving to Malaysia and was part of the build out of the super corridor for IT in Kuala Lumpur, helped one of those companies expand to the Philippines. He's been here in the U.S. for 20 years now, and a lot of his work has been digital transformation in the manufacturing sector. My other co-founder, she is a serial entrepreneur from Dallas, Texas. She has done, her background is in developmental education. She's done a lot of software as a service type startups, and many of them have been in the healthcare sector. And so for both of them, they had encountered, either through their own ventures they started or the organizations they were working with, whether inside those organizations or as customers, clients, seeing all the barriers that exist when you're trying to implement something that's not standard practice. The three of us met because we all ended up in this college town, Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's the third largest city in the state of Kentucky. It's just north of Nashville. And we all work out of an adaptively reused former shopping mall. So you hear a lot, at least here in the U.S., about these indoor shopping malls that, of course, became especially a craze in the 1980s or so. And then a lot of those business models suffering and a lot of those malls being closed in the modern era as you move to more e-commerce, et cetera. Well, this mall was built in the mid-1960s. It was one of the first indoor shopping malls in this neck of the woods. And the university took it over 25 years ago when it largely had gone defunct. And now it's filled with tech startups, research labs. Some larger corporations have some of their research teams here and tech teams. And it's a great example of how you build that sort of thing. So the three of us were all working from here. We started working on some projects together, started collaborating, and realized, hey, each of us come from different backgrounds, but we have encountered a lot of the same types of collaboration problems when you're trying to do something new. And We have a lot of similar methodologies or approaches or complementary approaches on how to deal with that. So finally, for me, you covered it at the start of the program. I'm a first generation college student who decided to start a career in the newspaper business as the newspaper business was falling apart. So for me,
Good time to start.
digital disruption hit my career path before I'd hardly gotten started on it. So I settled into a career of being interested in that disruption. I've worked mostly in academia, in the media industries, and in marketing and communications, and encountered a lot of these same issues. It's been an organization. The organizations I work for, these sectors have been forced to be at the front end of a lot of innovation by necessity. As
Yeah.
business models changed, as the internet era hit their core business, and watching those organizations navigate that change, seeing what succeeds and makes it through versus what falls into the waste bin, has helped define my approach. So that's really what we founded InnoEngine on, is to say there is
Yeah.
an approach, a methodology when you're trying to implement something you've never done before, and how does it help to have a co-pilot on that journey?
So when did you? So look, by the way, just the office space sounds fantastic, and I wish there were some abandoned malls in the UK that we could use for this, because it's probably awesome for collaboration, even if it's just small talk at the water cooler or whatever it may be, because there's so many people there with forward
We have
thinking
a big
ideas.
canoe that used to be the mall water fountain. It's got plants in it. It's a great
Oh
place to
wow.
gather
Okay.
in
Okay.
the old corridor.
I hope there are some good restaurants still in there. um, So when did you first recognize that innovation implementation follows, repeatable steps, as
I,
you just mentioned? Was there just like an aha moment when you're like, okay, we can
yeah, I
formalize
mean, one of
this?
the things after there are a series of them. After seeing what happened to the newspaper business, I ended up helping found a research group at MIT, a think tank around the rise of Web 2.0 platforms. And we ended up having a bunch of different media companies, advertising agencies, brands who were suddenly trying to figure out how to navigate that change. So the organizations were very
Yeah.
different, but you started to see the same repeated patterns in each one of those organizations as they were encountering their version of this disruption. For several years after that, I went to work for a strategic communications firm headquartered in New York, called Peppercom. Most of their clients were
Yeah.
B2B companies, and they were all in very different fields: financial services, architecture, manufacturing. And I was working with them on their communication challenges, and I saw, hey, it doesn't matter which sector you're in. Every time one of these organizations are getting hit with having to implement a set of new policies, figure out how to become publishers, figure out how to manage online communication spaces, figure out how to do recruitment differently. It didn't matter what sector they were in. There were just these common pitfalls,
It's all the
again,
same.
repeated patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in my own career, and especially as I started to get the chance to run my own innovation ventures inside some companies, started thinking about those patterns and how do you build models that help respond to those patterns, that help push and shepherd projects
Can you
through.
can you outline to me what
Yeah,
a model
yeah.
could look
So
like, just
we
for
like
our
our
listeners and
metaphors. So at
myself?
InnoEngine, we talk about gears. What are the gears of the
Okay.
innovation engine? And we talk about six gears, and those six gears have interdependence, right? They're interlocking. So sometimes a project gets jammed up. It's because a gear is locked, but you may be focused on the fourth gear, but it's gear number one that's locked. So for us, the first gear is imagination. And often that's an area that organizations skip right over. Well, okay, we're trying to do something we've never done before. What does done look like? What
What's the
what
big
what are we
picture?
trying to achieve? Do
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
a common vision for the end? Do we have a story imagined for what that looks like? And are we all on the same page? The second gear is intelligence. Do we know everything we need to know in order to implement that vision?
Yeah.
What are our known unknowns? How do we research that and figure out what we need to know? Third gear is infrastructure. what do we not have in place in order to implement this properly? Is it subject matter expertise that we're missing? Is it technical infrastructure? Whatever that might be. The fourth gear is the actual implementation. And how do you manage that and run that first pilot, that first round, that first iteration? Then impact. Okay, how do you measure impact? Did it work? And then finally, iteration. Okay, we're trying to build a repeatable pattern, a model for doing this. And so you want to turn those gears as fast as possible. Those are repeatable patterns and models. That's RPM. RPM is about how to get that engine moving faster. So for us, it's those 6 gears, and funny enough, they all begin with an I. It's funny how things turn out, Harry.
I was about to say that as well. So it's almost like you get the project, you strip it back, start with the fundamentals, and actually say, right, what's our ground? What's our knowledge here? Well, how can we build upon this? And it's why I like the sound of it is because you're foreseeing any hurdles before you get to them.
Absolutely, and that's part of our goal. Is our unofficial. I like to joke. Our unofficial tagline is, "If you know what you need, it won't be us." And I joke because if you know exactly what's needed and the project is really well defined, there's probably a firm, a partner out there who already does that better than we do. We know exactly what we need, but we need an IT firm to help us build that out. We need this software component, or we need a marketing firm to help us spread the word. That's great. We like it when we don't know why we can't get this started. We know what we need to do, but we don't quite know how to get there, or we're midstream on something and we're stuck.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing we get excited about, because if it's a project that needs to happen, sometimes the work is it's stuck because it shouldn't happen, right? Like there are all these reasons you should kill that idea and erase it off your board.
And it's you identifying the problems as to why it's working.
Worth overcoming?
Okay. Is that still? Apologies, is a bit forward, but can they still pay you on a project basis if you go in there and recognise that this isn't? At the end of the day, you've been hired to launch the project or implement it alongside the team. But if you recognise areas that fundamentally are the reason this project can't launch, is it still billable?
I'm glad you asked that,
for example.
So for us, we're trying to productize how we can work with companies to match that need, right? So it could be a workshop to think something through. It could be a rapid sprint for a test. Hey, you've got an idea, but let's do a small test to see if it would work in a quick sprint before you start investing real resources.
Yeah.
All the way up to your point, like here's a 9-month implementation roadmap we'll help you build, and here are the parts you need us to plug into to supplement what your organization can do, all the way up to organizations that are doing something that's fairly robust and it's ongoing. Here's more of a retainer type way that we're going to stick with you as long as you need. So in our early days as a company, back to your point, we fully launched at the beginning of 2025. So for us, we're developing these pathways as we see what companies need on the ground.
Okay. So I take it the 3 of you sat down, and I know there's the 5 I's, I think it is. The 3 of you sat down and said, these are our fundamentals and we can't take any shortcuts because otherwise we're actually going against what we are saying we do as an organization.
That's part of what we're trying to figure out as we get into each one of these projects. Think of it as an iteration. These are iterations for testing our own models, right? We think our approach will be helpful to this organization. It meets our need. Right. And so when you think about qualifying business, and Harry, I know you've got to think about it in your own business and work, we try to define, does the organization have a defined problem or opportunity that matters to the business in a fundamental way? Are we talking to a stakeholder who has ownership of that problem or opportunity? And does it matter to them enough that they're willing to put resources behind it? And so for us, it's when it meets those 3 criteria, then we see how we can help.
As a consultant project manager, as this falls across a lot, and I've spent the past 10 years of my career in SaaS sales, and what you're speaking to is something I would walk into every conversation thinking, being like, am I meeting all these criteria? So it's almost like you're defining the actual project as well as defining, as I would
Totally,
define a
and
sale, so to
sometimes
speak.
we meet with somebody, we discover what they need isn't us, and then we'll say, hey, you need to go hire. I don't know. I'll use this as an example because it's one of my
Yeah,
background. You've got a great story to tell. You haven't told it. You should work with this PR firm or this group who could help you get it out there. The flip side is you need to distill down what your story is, right? Then we might work with you on that part and then say, then let's figure out how to go help spread the word. But you've got to get real clear about who you are, the value you're bringing to the table. Because that's
yeah,
an
yeah.
example of a founder that we've been working with who built a great business, and not everybody knows about it because it's been under the radar because he's kind of an introverted founder.
Yeah. And that's where you come in.
Absolutely.
So, so what's the bigger mission you're pursuing with InnoEngine? Is there a change you want to see that organizations should adopt,
There,
or is there a personal maybe
yeah,
mission
there are two
attached to it?
pieces, and that reflects the fact that we have two types of clients.
Yeah,
So one of those pieces is if there are things on your list that stay on your list, you don't get them started or they got stuck and they just kind of linger there. Often organizations move on to the things
I
they know
know
what
very
to do
well.
with and kind of stall on the things they don't. So we would like to see a future state where organizations aren't afraid of tackling the things that could stay number 6 on the list. They get stuck there, and either help move them forward or off the list or into the parking lot or into return to the future. And so we believe
Yeah,
there's a lot of unrealized potential and a lot of unnecessary cost left with organizations not tackling some of those things because they don't know how to move them forward. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is what happens when there are opportunities or challenges, but no one organization will tackle them. And so we're working on multiple, massively multi-stakeholder projects. So we say, here's a need. Yeah, everybody agrees that
yeah.
this is a
I
problem.
remember you saying.
Take metals manufacturing supply chain is one of the areas we're working in. There are some common opportunities, some common challenges to people, companies that work in that supply chain, as well as local regional government who cares about the jobs that are in that supply chain. These are problems no company can tackle on its own, and the government's not going to solve it on its own. But if you were to create a space where all those entities could co-invest together and work on some of those problems, then suddenly you've created a model that might move it forward. Whereas every company or every organization trying to do their own little thing will never move the needle. It's like you're all already trying to do this. Let's create a structure of governance where we can do it together.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's the bigger mission for us is how do you unlock that
And
value?
yeah. And
That's
have you thought about your
absolutely.
roadmap to getting there?
There are revenue roadmaps to getting there, right? So how are we doing enough business? Is our
Yeah, yeah.
process translating to a way people can buy into that and realize it? There's also then just seeing the successful case studies, right? So part of our managed growth is considering each one of these client engagements as an opportunity to test and iterate our own approaches and build our case studies to sell
Yeah,
those
of course.
services
And
because we're to some degree helping create a category that's not
from
well defined yet, sort of a subset within management consulting or a subset
so
within some of these larger worlds. But we don't want to just build a plan and hand it to the person. We also don't want to just implement a plan once built. We want to kind of ride that line between imagining it and implementing it as kind of a through line partner.
forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I'm picturing it as you probably want at the moment to take on as many projects as possible that are as
Yep.
different as possible to each other, build case studies about them. So that means you use the list analogy of someone having that problem on their list. That means there's more often than not that problem that's on their list you've solved. And when you approach them as a company,
So
you're
you
like,
think
here's the
about it
case
to your
study on how
point,
we
you know,
solved
to the
that.
point of RPM. If we find patterns and have built models that work again and again for a certain problem type, then we can also train people who come to work for InnoEngine, and we know how to solve that problem. We've seen it time and time again. We've done it this way and this way and this way. And then that requires us to then test the model at our leadership level by taking it to as many different types of problems as possible. Does this approach work in this setting? Oh no, it needs to be modified. Okay, we need to build out the modified
Yeah.
piece, because then you can scale by building those modules, training folks. Also, as we grow it, part of our
And as
goal
you
too
said,
is how do you
yeah.
train folks inside the organizations for how to spot and do some of this work themselves. And then again, we're there for when you get stuck.
Okay. So it's almost like you need to build the module out. And as you says, each module is
Oh,
relatable to different industries as well. But they'll have to obviously be standardized. So you mentioned building out potentially the team and training someone within your own organization. Um, has there been any major challenges or setbacks in this first year that's changed how you approach
yeah, I mean,
projects
the
or
way we're
maybe even
approaching
build
it
your
so
team?
far has been through a lot of fractional expertise that are in our greater community. So, we have
Okay.
taken on folks who are FTE on a project basis, working on projects, and those projects may end up even being multi-year. In many cases, it's sort of, here's the need, here's the roadmap for the project. How do we tap into the fractional help we need to get that done? What I suspect we'll start to see happen, there's certain types of expertise we need to call on so often that some folks who are calling on fractionally by project may make sense to just, work with us more of the time or all the time as we continue to grow, because both they see and we see, okay, we need you time and time again. At some point, it's easier to just build an ongoing relationship. So we're trying to test that and build it
Yeah.
up rather than decide on a management model. And, because I see some of our clients do this a lot, where they have imagined they need something, then they staffed their team with full timers before they needed to. Then they realized that it wasn't exactly what they needed, but now they've got a lot of infrastructure mess on their hands because they built the infrastructure faster. But to go to our gears, they moved too quickly to the infrastructure gear. They didn't have all the intelligence they needed, and they didn't have a common imagination for what they were trying to build in the first place. So it left them with burdened by infrastructure that wasn't quite right. That'd
And
be
if
our
you were with
goal,
them at the
right? Say,
time,
hey,
you wouldn't
let's
have let them
test
move
this.
up a
Let's
gear.
build it a little bit of time. Test that market. Is it
Yeah.
even a good market for you? If it seems promising, then how do you work your way toward kind of an ongoing permanent resource for that, if necessary?
Okay. So moving on to say your business and operations today as a three-man team, walk me through your three client strategies. So it's startups, enterprise, and multi-stakeholder projects. What does each one need?
Absolutely.
As I can imagine, they're very, very
For
diverse.
startups, most often the challenge or the innovation opportunity is the organization itself, right? So they're typically, we're engaging with a
Yeah.
company. If it's a startup, it's because they've started to gain some traction. They either have revenue or they have enough investment that they're looking to scale up and they need help once they've reached that level. And that's where we're coming in to work with them. And so often it's at a pivot point where the founder or founding team has gotten far enough along and are seeing that traction that it's now gone beyond their subject matter expertise. And that's where we can say, hey, how do you bring in models to figure
Okay.
out how to manage this to get to the right answer, to figure out how you think carefully about your next steps, and not get out ahead of yourself in a way that burdens you in the long run or sends you down the wrong path. That's a lot different than that second bucket, a big enterprise client or organization that they're well established, but now they're trying to do something outside their wheelhouse or outside their main area of expertise or their comfort zone. So I'll give you an example with that. We worked last year with Google to build and to help them build an enterprise sort of a suite of AI tools. These are actually available open access because they're meant for public sector entities. And Google doesn't need our help building AI tools. They sort of know what they're doing on that front. But what they wanted to do was build this through trying to make the tools were meant to make sense of real-time public input. So what they needed was, can we run a real-time public input campaign or a series of them where we then build and test our tools to see if it can help sort and make sense of all this public input in a way that actually allows decision makers to look at it and utilize it without having to dig through endless amounts of verbatim comments and feedback. And that's the part that, is not what Google does. So They came to us to help them run those implementations so that while they built the tools, we could manage the pilots that helped get the real-time data that allowed them to test, refine, iterate, and build the tools they were building. So the posters behind me is for the local regional campaign that we ran here in the Bowling Green area. We asked the question to our region, what could BG be? What do you want to see for the future of the region? And collected ideas, and the question was very open-ended. And then Google was able to build and refine their approach based on how they dealt with making sense of the wide range of public feedback that came through this dialogue.
Okay, wow.
Totally, and that's one benefit.
So you tested it on your own area, and
that takes me to the third area. The third area we work in are these massively multi-stakeholder projects. So what happens when you're tackling a problem you've never tackled before, but no one entity can own the problem or the opportunity? Then you got to create the space to work on it together. So I mentioned we have one venture we're doing that's in the metals manufacturing space. In relation to this, what could BGB? We're working with our local regional governments, as well as a lot of public and private sector folks on this initiative called the BG 2050 project. So it's based on a methodology that originates from the University of Southern California's Civic Imagination Project, where it's basically when places are trying to think about the future, how do you almost Hollywood? I mean, USC's right in the heart of Hollywood. So how do you take the media industry's approach to world building and apply that to placemaking in real world places? So, okay, let's imagine the future of our place. Let's tell a story of what that future looks like. See if we share some common view of that world or figure out where we have differences of opinion on what we want that future to look like. And then you can start to say, okay, how do we build from where we're at now to that? And so we also do a lot of work with a group at MIT called the MIT REAP, R-E-A-P. It's the Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program. And they work globally almost as an accelerator, but for places. So instead of accelerator for individual companies, how do places build up their innovation capacity to encourage more entrepreneur-led growth in the economy? And so taking those two methodologies and putting them together, the BG 2050 project is basically, we're just north of Nashville, and our county is slated to grow by another city of Bowling Green in 20 or less. So that's the question we're working on. If we're going to grow really fast, it could get out ahead of you real quick. How do you think about it? How do you get ahead of it? How
infrastructure needs to grow as well. Yeah. This must be such a cool project to work on, because it's obviously, I was about to say, so close to home.
Some of the things we're testing It's fortunate that we're in a place and kind of rooted in a
Yeah, yeah.
place that is often game to say, hey, if it's something that needs to be tested, it needs to be tested across multiple organizations or kind of out in the public. We've got a we're rooted in a very collaborative place. I mentioned we're working out of this old mall where all these folks have kind of met one another, and
Nice.
that's sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
our absolutely. So our projects
Is it very community driven then?
are national and international in scope, our
Yeah, yeah.
clients, but when we need to test something for the first time, we're also very fortunate in our own place to have a set of collaborators to say, hey, we've got an opportunity to
Bowling Green.
pilot this. Maybe we could work on it together and pilot
I
it
love
here.
it. Yeah, yeah. It's exciting.
Oh,
That's
we'd be
honestly
happy to
awesome. I need
host
to
you.
get myself
There's a
up to
lot of
Bowling
room in
Green
an
by the
old
sounds of
mall.
it. Uh, yeah, of course. So look, you're working with some awesome clients, and I love the that initiative, the BG250. How did Google find
It
you, or
was.
was
So
this
what
just
happened
through a
is they had
referral, an old
decided
contact?
they were looking into public facing interfaces that could collect the type of input that they'd given because they didn't want to build from scratch. They didn't need to build from scratch the platform that people put their comments into. They were trying to build the AI sorting tools on the end. And so they happened upon
Yeah,
a platform. It's called Polis, and it's from a group called the Computational Democracy Project. And they decided, I think this is the interface we want to use. And then they started researching who has used this interface in the past. And it just so happened that I'd been involved in some pilot projects through Columbia University here in the U.S. To use that Polis platform. It was mostly in the media industries, newspaper and radio. And so they contacted us and said, you've used this platform before. Here's what we're trying to do. And we started brainstorming how that could work. And then
amazing.
ended up with oh, by the way, we're doing this BG 2050 thing currently here in our home region. Could this be a really fertile ground for testing what you want to test? And then that's when they said, introduce us to your partners. So for us, it was prior familiarity with the platform Google had chosen to use.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Okay, I love how it's almost like a full circle moment. Um, so going forward,
Yes.
how are you looking to find new clients for Above and Beyond? Because as a
You
startup,
better
you always
believe
have
it,
to be
right?
thinking about where is my
People ask us
next
how
source
it's
of revenue
going. I
essentially
always say,
coming
well
from.
enough to keep going. But all kidding aside, that's part of our goal. There's two phases of that. One is as we build these repeatable patterns and models from all these engagements that we're in the midst of now that we wrapped in
Yep.
2025, how do you make them repeatable? How do you take them and say, now what are other organizations who have similar problems that we can take that to? And at the same time, as you said, Harry, applying it to as many diverse types of problems that feel relevant as possible to help refine here's how it's useful to other
Yeah, yeah.
clients.
So then are you going to push this out via
Absolutely. For our
LinkedIn
growth, a
content,
lot of it, I think,
articles?
is coming at this
Um,
point in time based on three things. One is going to be that networking effect of let's put our content and what we're doing out there so that as people are searching, they may find us. A lot of it is referrals, not just
nice.
of clients we've already worked with, but as we've amassed these fractional teams, a lot of that fractional talent kind of starts to get the gist of what we do, and then they're thinking, what other organizations do I encounter that need a method like this? And so some of the people who we've brought on projects are now coming to us with other projects. Hey, I also work with this organization. And as I always say to that fractional talent, we
Yeah,
say, the three of us say, if they come to you with a problem, that Harry can solve, then you don't need us. If you encounter a problem that Harry can't solve on your own, then you're going to call us and say, I was approached or I'm in conversation with Acme Corporation or Vandelay Industries, and they have had a problem, and they need to go through kind
yeah.
of a big fundamental. So that's the second way, and then the other thing is we've been fortunate. Some of our projects, the Google project being the most prominent, the metals industry work we're doing, are also able to be shared very publicly. And so we'll start to get referrals that way. What we tested for
Yeah.
Google here in our home region, we are now having other regions say, we've got a pressing challenge in our neck of the woods that we need to solve. How did you do that? And what would it look like to build that process here? And so we're talking everything from major metros down to rural areas who are trying to take some of the things we've piloted and think about how it adapt to their place. And that becomes another area where, we can modify our approach and figure out what their iteration looks like.
And this kind of leads me on to my sort of closing questions, and that's, there's obviously, it feels like there's a huge space for InnoEngine to grow. And what does scale done right
I think InnoEngine scale
in around the next 3 to 5 years?
We grow in two ways. One is we grow our network of fractional subject matter experts. Actually, I'll say 3 areas. I'm going to revise that. Grow our network of fractional subject matter experts, because more projects means relying on more talent that we need to bring in, but we don't need them all the time. It's based on project needs. And of course, that's going to beget a referral network of landing more business. So that's one piece. Second, as we find those repeated patterns, we'll start to train engineers in training, right? To say, okay, this problem time and time again, and it is a repeatable model that is well defined, that we have a whole series of case studies on. Now we can start to train people to go do that on our behalf, productized way.
Yeah. Here's the blueprint. Have you started putting your entire organization and brain into something like an LLM inside an AI model?
Doing that even more deliberately. And so the other piece of it, back to your point, is where I see that third area of building out. That's why I revised my statement, is I think in the future there will then be the potential for curriculum, self-guided offerings, other ways of productizing and sharing the base level knowledge of how these types of models work that we can offer to people that helps normalize doing this type of work and thinking this way inside an organization.
Yeah, amazing. So the closing question for me is, I've got 2 in mind. I was going to say something around what's your North Star metric for the end of the year, but I don't even want to ask that because I've got an understanding of where you want to take the business. So if I was to give you unlimited resources today, what's the next
Great
big
question.
project?
I mean, I think one of the challenges that we have
to InnoEngine then
is, there are multiple ways we could go with that. One of the challenges that we have is how to convince and how do we de-risk taking the leap to pull the trigger on doing something you've never done before. Because that's where a lot of organizations, the place they get stuck most often is even the get started part. And that's especially true in the multi-stakeholder side of things, right? An individual organization, you still got multiple divisions inside the company, and the larger the company is, that's its whole, as you well know, Harry, right? Then happen upon something and it matters to everybody some, but it's nobody's job on their own to solve it. How do you de-risk getting that started? So that's an area that's trickier, because I think if you start to describe it, everybody can see the value potentially unlocked for all stakeholders involved if you get it started, but it exists outside the organization rather than inside it, and it is hard for people to put their time, attention, and resources into getting that started. Yep, exactly. People say, wouldn't it be great if, right? we've got workforce issues, and I
there it
wish
sits
someone
down the
would
bottom
solve
of
it. But workers aren't trained for the AI revolution that's hit us, and somebody needs to fix that problem. So there are a lot of those. Wouldn't it be great if they would do something about this? And when the real question is, we're all they, then the question becomes, how do we all do something about this? And there's some structures that need to be set up with the proper government to do it together. Absolutely. So that's where I would invest
it's the
resources
bridging the gap, and
in.
it's
Some of
also
that's
articulating
education.
it is even harder.
Some of that's de-risking. Like you could even imagine if you said, for the first 100 organizations who tackle a problem like this, here's a fund that would help de-risk your investment in it. That if you get matching funds locally to solve that problem, we want to see more places do this. It's what I'd love to see, a private foundation or a philanthropist or a federal fund in a state or a national government start to invest in more projects like that. They're place led, but they're de-risked. I think that's part of it, and it's got to become
why you
sustainable
need more business-minded
people, right? That's the other thing.
It
can't be philanthropically supported to be sustained, but you de-risk getting it started. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, look, Sam, I feel like we've had a nice full circle moment there, and I've really enjoyed having you on. I'm going to put the details to InnoEngine at the bottom of the podcast.
Appreciate it, Harry, and looking forward to keeping the conversation.
But thank you so much for joining that. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Amazing. Cheers, Sam.